All right, Nietzsche part two. So let me summarize what we did last time, and then we'll get into the second criticism, right, of Nietzsche. Thank you, Islam, for your encouragement in the chat. Okay, great. All right, so remember that Nietzsche has two main criticisms, right? The first one is that Christianity is nihilistic, right? We talked about that last time. That Christianity is against life. Christianity has a kind of profound distrust and considers life to be right a space of sinfulness, corruption, and we analyzed a little bit where how Christianity got that way. Can anyone remind me, how did Christianity get to thinking of the world as corrupt, to thinking of life as a lesser state that we need to avoid by all cost? What was the influence? Very good. Yes, excellent. Right, the Hellenistic, Platonic influence, right, which infiltrated Christianity. Remember that Christianity was born in the Greek context, right? All the New Testament is written in Greek, right? So obviously you're going to have influences, right? And we saw last time that when we go to the original scriptures, right? When we go, for example, to the life and teachings of Jesus, we looked at the first miracle, right? We don't have this, right? This is a development within Christianity. And so Nietzsche really, make sure you write this down, really what he's criticizing is not really Christianity, it's Platonism within Christianity, right? So that's important. Make sure you write this down, right? Let me say it again. What Nietzsche is really criticizing is not really Christianity, right? Since the Christian scriptures don't really talk about life in that way. It's really the Platonic, it's Plato within Christianity that Nietzsche is really criticizing. Okay, so that was kind of, it wasn't too hard to respond to Nietzsche on that particular point. Now, the point he's going to make now, honestly, was the point that destabilized me personally for the longest time, right? And I mentioned last time, it took me about 10 years to properly respond to Nietzsche for myself, right? So we'll see. We're going to look, of course, I told you that from now on till the end of the semester, we'll be continuously responding to this particular criticism that we're about to do today. Okay, so let's go there. So second criticism, right, that Nietzsche has is that Christianity is delusional, right? So let me write the two here. So we had nihilistic and delusional, right? Excellent. So this is the second criticism. So let me summarize a little bit his argument, and we're going to see also other people who made the same argument around his time. So it's interesting to read them also. And then we'll go in the text, and then we'll try and begin to respond, right? So basically, this is the idea. For Nietzsche, Christianity is a big cop-out, right? In other words, Christianity, in the face of suffering, is incapable of really dealing with it, and so it creates a parallel universe, right, which is a complete delusion, where everything will be okay, right? That's in essence all the teachings of Christianity around the concept of heaven, right, around the concept of an afterlife. For Nietzsche, is just a big delusion in order to be able to survive in this miserable world, right? So he's saying Christians were so miserable, they had to come up with this alternative reality to feel better, right? But it's all a complete invention. It's a complete construct and delusion that only could come in the mind of, weak and miserable people, right? So that's in essence, right, his argument. So make sure you write it down. So let me say it again, right? So you can write it down so you really get it, right? He's saying Christianity, this idea of heaven came from feeling so miserable in the world, so incapable of facing the world, so helpless in front of all the chaos and the uncertainty, that to feel better, we create a whole parallel universe where everything will be all right? But it's all a big invention. So there's actually two more people who said exactly the same thing right around the time of Nietzsche. You have Freud, a little later than Nietzsche, right? Who has written fabulous work called The Future of an Illusion. And then you have Marx with this famous quote about, I'm going to put it here, religion is the opium of the people. Okay, and both of them are coming after Nietzsche, probably influenced by Nietzsche, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Freud first, right? I really, really encourage you to read him, right? In general. How many of you have read Freud? Let me see a show of hands. Nobody. This is terrible. Okay, so you can start with the future. Thank you, Corey. I see you have read Freud, right? You can start with the future of an illusion, but I personally, my favorite book by Freud is The Interpretation of Dreams. So I really encourage you to read this. If you're a person who has lots of interesting dreams, you want to learn how to interpret them. And once I read that particular book, I actually learned the technique. And I've been interpreting dreams ever since for the last 20 years. So if any of you actually have a dream that's interesting, feel free to stay after one day and I'll show you the method, right? The Freudian method, how to interpret it, and I'll interpret it in front of you. So you're welcome to check it out, right? And see how it works. But really, I would read that book. That's a great introduction, right? And yes, Ahmad, the Jungian method is very interesting too, right? Both of them have very divergent views, right? How to interpret dreams. But for me, the Freudian method actually works. It's more rigorous. When I'm doing the dreams, I rely more on the Freudian method actually than on the Jungian method. So okay. So anyway, so very interesting, very brilliant writer and thinker, right? Really worth reading. So let me summarize a little bit what he says here in The Future of an Illusion. Basically, he says this, right? Humanity loves to dream, he says, right? We dream at night, and he says we also dream in the day, right? But he says in the night when we dream, usually, you can verify this, most of our dreams are usually playing out things that we wish would happen in reality, right? I'll give you an example, right? You have a crush on someone, and guess who you're going to dream about at night? What do you think? And what will you be doing with that person, right? Amazing things that you can't do during the day, right? So he actually says, right, usually when we dream, it's always like a wish or a desire that we're playing out in our dream life, right, in order to be able to have it. So he calls it like wish fulfillment, right? So, but then he says we also dream during the day. So anytime, and this is how it works, anytime we feel miserable in life, we're going to create and project an alternative reality in order to feel better. And this is where he says religion comes from. So religion for him is a collective delusion. It's a collective dream that we all dream together in order to play out our deepest fantasies. So for example, imagine yourself in the world, right? Before religion arrives, before you create a religion, right? You're in the world, it's awful, right? When you take out the religious component, what you're left with? Nothing. You're gonna die in a few years. Everything is suffering. There is no, this is Freud, Argitis, this is Freud, but it's connected to what Nietzsche is saying, right? Everything, you could die at any moment, your loved ones could die at any moment. And so you start to fantasize, what if, everything had meaning? What if there was a creator who loved us and protected us, and now you're dreaming, you're daydreaming, right? And you're coming up with this whole story to make yourself feel better in the world. Are you following what I'm saying? How religion is a kind of daydream, it's a collective dream. Are you seeing? Put your hand on the screen if you're following what I'm saying, right? So just like we dream at night, right, and kind of our fantasies about what we want to happen in our dreams. Likewise, we can dream during the day and create this kind of story which doesn't exist, but we say it does so that we feel better, right? Okay, so I'm getting a few people in the chat. Great, some people are talking about dreams. Okay, all right, very good. So that's what Freud says, right, in his book, and this is pretty much what Nietzsche is saying in our text, right? We are so miserable that we create this story, right? By the way, great literary rendition of all of this is The Life of Pi. How many of you read the book or saw the movie? Put your hand up. Okay, this is a classic. You have to read it. It's like the Bible, right? Everybody either see the movie or read the book. Thank you, Castaneda. You read it. I'm glad. I think about 3 of you or so read it, right? There's hope for this generation. With the tiger, yes, Ahmad. Right? Read this book because this book is really, the message of this book is basically telling, it's exactly what Freud and Nietzsche are saying. It's a book about religion, but it's all hidden, right? You kind of think it's a nice story about someone caught in a boat with a tiger, but actually this is a book which is talking about religion and the origins of religion. So I invite you to read it or read it again with this in mind, right? What is the author telling us about the origin of religion, of the world religions? I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to let you figure it out. But you have the tools now to do it. Okay. Second one, Marx, right? So if you remember Marx, for those of you who are familiar with him, he was basically trying to start a revolution, right? He was the one who wrote The Capital, right, which is about the difference between classes, the rich, the poor, right, and how the poor need to get together, the working class need to get together, create a revolution, move forward, right, take over, and make sure that the wealth is spread out equally, right? This is in general Marxism, right? So in this book, of course, he's trying to start a revolution, and there's one major obstacle to his revolution. Can anyone tell me what it is? Anyone have an idea? You're trying to round people up. You're trying to get them excited about, doing a revolution, sacrificing to get out of their poverty, to get out of their misery. You're trying to get them together. And the biggest obstacle, yes, Colon, is religion, right? Why? Why, Colon? Why is religion an obstacle to this revolutionary endeavor?
I think it's an obstacle because it's kind of hard to bring people with different beliefs together for one cause.
So it's not exactly that, because they're all Christian, right? We're not now in Queens where everybody has different beliefs, right? We're over there in Europe at the time there's only Christianity, so they're all Christian. So what would you say, Colon, now would be the obstacle?
I don't know.
Okay, great. Who wants to help Colon? What's the main obstacles? You're dealing with a bunch of Christians. They're poor, they're miserable, they're Christian. What's your biggest obstacle to start your revolution, based on what I just said? Islam, go ahead.
I'm probably wrong, but I'll give it a try. That's not everybody had the same view of what Christianity meant to them.
No, that's not it.
No.
Y'all are too postmodern. You're all too postmodern.
Yeah.
Not enough money. What do you mean? Oh, to start the revolution. That's okay. Very pragmatic answer. Al-Haddai, go ahead.
The idea, like, why do all that? It's like at the end of the day, you're gonna go to heaven. There's an end to this, so why bother?
Very good. Finally. Right. Absolutely. If you're a Christian and you believe in heaven, you believe everything's going to be all right in a few years, why bother with the revolution, right? You're like, it's okay. God wants me to suffer. I'm carrying my cross here. Leave me alone. Let me carry my cross, right? So I can have a nice crown in heaven, right? So the biggest obstacle he found to his revolutionary ideals was precisely Christianity, because Christianity kind of made people feel good where they are in their miserable state, like opium, right? That's why he says here, right? Christianity is or religion, right, is the opium of the masses. For those of you who don't know what is opium, opium is the equivalent of heroin. It's the same thing, right? Same thing. Opium is natural version. Heroin is a manufactured version. Same drug, right? Makes you feel good. No matter how wretched your life is, you're in bliss. That's what he's saying Christianity is doing to these miserable masses. They're wretched. They should be miserable. But because they have religion, they're constantly high. And so there's no way you can have a revolution with a bunch of high people. That's the issue here. You're seeing the connections, right? Between Freud, Marx, Nietzsche, they're all pretty much saying the same thing, right? Okay, so let's go now to the text and find some of these ideas. 157. Everyone with me? Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to start reading. In Christianity, he says, this is paragraph 15. In Christianity, neither morality nor religion come into contact with reality at any point. In other words, religion has no contact with reality. Complete fable, right? That's what he's saying. He continues, nothing but imaginary causes, imaginary effects. I'm skipping a little bit. Imaginary natural science, imaginary psychology, imaginary teleology. Let's write these down and figure out what he means. Okay, so first of all, he talks about imaginary causes. I'm going to explain all of these. Number 2, imaginary effects. Number 3, imaginary natural science. Number 4, imaginary psychology. Number 5, Imaginary teleology. Okay, great. So let's look at the first one, imaginary causes. So he's saying, first of all, right, basically Christianity is inventing this whole parallel universe full of imaginary things, right? First imaginary thing Christianity creates, imaginary causes. Anybody can tell me what are these imaginary causes that Christianity is creating? Causes of what? Anybody know? Let's begin to interpret what he means here. What does it mean? What kind of imaginary causes is Christianity inventing? See if you get any of this. Ahmad, go ahead.
That Al-Hadai just said it, Mona. God created the world.
Yes, exactly, right? Al-Hadai said the same thing. First cause, Aristotle, right, already. There has to be a cause to all of us. Therefore, there has to be a creator. And we're creating this, right? Because we don't know. We're here, and we long for there to be a cause. We long for there to be a point of origin so we can make sense of our existence. So we create it. And so here we are creating a first cause, creating a creator, creating God, right? Everybody with me for this first complete delusion? Okay, great. All right. Let's go to the second one. What did I put in the chat? Imaginary effects. Okay, this one's a little tricky. Imaginary effects. Okay, so let me give you an example, right? This is someone. Have you ever heard of people who tell you, I was a sinner, and then I met God, and then now I'm transformed. I'm a new person, right? Or I was an alcoholic, or I was a wife beater, or I was a drug addict, and then God came in my life, and now I'm completely different, changed. In other words, there has been an effect, an impact. Religion has had an effect on my life, has affected me. And now Nietzsche is saying this is imaginary. What does he mean? By this whole experience being a complete, I mean, it's real, you can see the change. So what is he saying when he means imaginary effect? Ahmad, explain to us what you mean.
He's saying that everything that happened to you was just your own imagination.
So no, there is a transformation. We can see it. But what's the imaginary part? Al-Hadai, help us out.
Let someone else go and then I'll go.
Huh?
Let someone else go and I'll go after them.
You're the only one. No,
No, just myself.
sorry, Jasper. Didn't see you. Jasper, go ahead.
So I guess he's kind of saying like you always had it the entire time. It was always based on you. You're just kind of using God as an excuse to do it. You already had it.
Great, very good. Al-Hadai, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say it's just the effects around you or yourself. It's not something that God gave you.
Right, exactly. It's not God. You just got your mind to it and you made an effort and now here you are, right? There's no effect. Nothing happened to you. You did this, right? That's an imaginary effect, right? Which is what he says here, right? Redemption, grace, forgiveness. This is all in your head. You did this. You saved yourself. Nothing came from the outside and impacted you. You did this, right? Okay, let's move to the next one. We're destroying everything. I hope you're realizing that at the end of this, we can just all die because we're destroying everything, right? There's nothing left at the end of this class. So Argitis, right? Yeah, some people say God, right? God inspired me to change, but Nietzsche would said, no, you inspired yourself. One day you woke up, you had an awakening, and you chose, right? So you're saying it's God, but actually it was just you. Make sense, Argitis? Are you there? Where are you, Argitis? Yes, okay, great. All right, wonderful. All right, so let's go to the third one. Third one. Imaginary natural science. Okay, so this one is cool. Imaginary natural science. This is, you know how when we study biology, what is the highest species according to when we study in biology? What's the most evolved species when you study? Tell me. Is it the birds? Is it the reptiles? Who's the highest? Achunov, go ahead.
Humans?
Yes. Okay, now why do we say that, right? This is it. And he's saying, right, science in many ways has been completely influenced by Christianity, right? Because Christianity says at the, in the origin, right, when you look at the way Christianity talks about the creation of the world, you have the whole world is created, and then human beings are like the crown of creation, right? And so science has followed this and followed this idea, this Christian idea that we are the center of the universe, right? And so now science is saying, oh yeah, there's all these lesser species, and then there's us, right? And he's saying this is imaginary natural science. This is based on a fiction. Who decides who is the highest species, right? Of course we're going to decide that, but are we, right? Is this not simply a Christian idea that we have not yet let go of, that we are the center of the universe? Are you following me on this one? Everyone, put your hand. Just 2 people are following? Okay, good. All right, so that's the imaginary science. We fantasize that we're at the center of the world, that we're the most complex, the most sophisticated, but this is all in our minds. It's not necessarily true, right? We can't fly. We can't do anything, really. I mean, we can't breathe underwater. Who says we're the most sophisticated, right? It seems there's a lot more sophistication out there, right? Perhaps, right? Okay, so let's go to imaginary psychology. Okay. So this one is simply this. Al-Haddai, Nietzsche is rude. Yes, I told you, right? It was going to be in your face just to get you push your buttons, right? Go ahead.
More than like explaining things. It's okay to like think like that. Don't say it that way.
Wait, say that again. I can't hear you good. Can you say that again?
Okay, so it feels like he's attacking Christianity, not sharing his thoughts. Is that good?
Yeah. Nietzsche is simply attacking. He's not proposing a different argument. He's not making any arguments, remember, because his goal is to get us to think, right? He's not going to do the thinking for us. Remember, Nietzsche has a Socratic position. He's like Socrates. He just pokes until we react and we say, well, no, here's why. And then we start thinking and responding, right? So no, that's his position. He's blatantly, right, just attacking us, right? Absolutely, you got it. Okay, imaginary psychology. Okay, this is simply all of those fake feelings that Christianity has taught us to have. Okay, give me some example of fake feelings, feelings you wouldn't be having if you weren't a Christian. Unique feelings that you get when you're a Christian. Some feelings that you wouldn't be experiencing if you weren't a Christian. Anybody want to try? Achunov, go ahead.
Holiness, like a feel of what's called enlightenment. I don't know if that's the right word. Like when you pray, for example, you feel holy or righteous.
Yes, you can say, right, for example, some of the feelings of peace that you have when you're praying is just biochemistry. There's no God coming down, right? I think Rumi would be turning over in his grave, right? We talked about how Rumi talks about the feeling of the presence of God, and Nietzsche is saying it's just a feeling of peace. It doesn't, you cannot infer that that's God. You can just say, I feel peaceful. And maybe you feel peaceful because you sat in the right position or ate the right thing. And maybe it's just biochemical, right, that you feel peaceful. There might be no God at all making you feel peaceful. It's just, you put yourself in the right state and your biochemistry is feeling good because you're in the right state. So that's what he would argue, right? Other feelings that are complete fictions, but that Christians say, I'm feeling this, but nobody else is. More negative, on the negative side. Anyone want to try? I know I have good Catholics in the class. You would know this.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please, Professor?
Yes. What are some feelings that you have that you say are real, but actually you feel that just because you've been raised as a Christian, but nobody else is feeling those feelings? Let me be precise, because I don't think I'm too clear.
Like anger?
No, anger everyone has.
Oh, okay.
So this is a special feeling that only you have because you're a Christian. Argitis, you're kind of on the right track, actually, but not completely. Achunov?
Sinning.
Yes, exactly. The feeling of guilt. Your best friend, who's like atheist, is fine doing what they're doing. They're enjoying themselves. You, on the other hand, you come home ridden with guilt, right? Why? Because you've created this, right? You have created this state of mind. Christianity has created the feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, feelings of sinfulness. This is not objective. The person next to you is not feeling this. You're feeling this because you have created this atmosphere for yourself, right? Some people are starting to like Nietzsche, right? So are you seeing what I'm saying by that? That there's a whole range of feelings that Christianity has fabricated for us, right? That we don't need to feel. You don't need to be feeling sinful right now doing this, or you don't need to be feeling shame or guilt or and so forth, right? These feelings have been taught to you. They're not natural. The average human being who is not a Christian is not feeling them, right? So Nietzsche is kind of saying, complete imaginary psychology. You have created a whole range of new feelings that we don't need, right? And that are detrimental, that are keeping you from living. Remember, that's the number one issue. When you feel constantly guilty, you're not going to do that, right? And you're going to, thank you, Cor, yeah, you're going to be restricting yourself. You're going to be afraid, and you're not going to enter life. And this is the nihilistic aspect, right? Okay, last one. This one is tricky. I have to explain it. Imaginary teleology. Okay, teleology from the Greek telos, which means goal and objective. This is basically the idea that as a civilization, we're going somewhere, right? That there is an objective, right, to our collective history, that we're headed somewhere. I mean, in the 18th century, right before Nietzsche, people really believed that we were headed towards a better world, right? Christians say we're headed towards the end of the world. Depends what Christian you are, right? It can be apocalypse, or it can be the rapture, or it can be anything, right? But in general, for Christianity, as a civilization, we are moving towards either the apocalypse, the end of the world, or the saving, right, of the world by Jesus, right? So there's a direction. And Nietzsche is like, in your head, there's a direction. That's it. Otherwise, there's no direction. It's all chaos, right? You've created this because you want it so bad, right? Okay, are you seeing more clearly all of the different elements, the whole edifice, the whole architecture of delusion that Christianity has, in a way, built over the centuries? Are you seeing this? Put your hand in the screen if you're with me. Okay. So to be honest, so then he continues, right? And he says, well, why do we do this? Why do we have so many people believing this fiction, right? This fable? And he says this at the two last lines of 137. Are you there? But that explains everything. Put your hand in the screen. Okay. He says this, right? Who alone has reason to lie himself out of actuality? Like, who would need to lie to delude themselves about reality, right? And he says, he who suffers from it, right? But to suffer from actuality means to be an abortive actuality. So he's saying, right, only wretched people, miserable people who have no courage, who are cowards, right, who are afraid of life. That's what he means by abortive, meaning abortion. We're little aborted beings because we're not able to really enter life. We die. We're always, shriveled up. We're not really willing to enter, right? So he's saying, this is all coming out of a wretched, miserable mindset or sick mindset. You're so miserable and wretched, so you create all of this. And now you feel better in your fable that you've created for yourself. This is a tough one. This is a tough one to respond to, honestly, because that's the one that I stumbled on the most when I was learning Nietzsche. Because it's true. How do we know for sure whether indeed there is a God, or whether there is a direction, whether there is a first cause, whether my feelings are real, right? When I feel peace after prayer, right? How do I know I don't have any proof, right? And so the argument that he's giving is so plausible because we do it always, right? This is why it's so plausible, because as humanity, we do this. Let me give you an example. of how we continuously think like that, right? Okay, imagine yourself, you have a crush on someone. Back to the crush. You have a crush. And now suppose that out of the blue, suppose you talk to them a bit at the library or whatever, and then they disappeared, but you have a huge crush on them. Out of the blue, after 2 weeks, they text you. Now what are you thinking? What is your thought? What are you building in your head right now? Tell me. What are some of the things that are popping in your head? Okay, Argitis, I manifested that, but what are you thinking now about their feelings for you? How are you interpreting this text that you just received? Yes, Achuna, right? Means, oh, they must like me. Okay, this is good. So you start to fantasize or imagine, delude yourself that this random text, right, that probably they need your help for something, that they actually maybe have feelings for me. Do you see how naturally we create alternative realities when we feel miserable at something? Do you see how natural this is to us? Put your hand if you're following, right? So that's why I was really troubled, because if this is so natural to us, this is what we do, then why not? Why wouldn't we come up with a collective delusion just to feel better, right? Okay, so now we're in trouble, guys. We're in trouble. Achunav, tell us.
Isn't that logical to assume that though?
Hmm?
Isn't it logical to assume that type of to follow that type of thinking though?
What do you mean?
Like use the analogy with the crush, for example. So answered back, it's logical to think that they do like me. And the same thing with, like, there's logical reasoning as to why people believe there is a God, no? Or you would assume that it's only all subjective and rational.
Not completely following what you're saying.
I'm saying that the logic in that statement, or the analogy that you use, that the crush texts you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be safe for you to assume that, or safer, not entirely, that she has somewhat of a feeling towards you, right?
You assume that, right? But you don't really, there's no real reason just out of one text that she would be feeling anything. She would have to text you more, and then you have more evidence. But just out of that one text, you're already constructing something.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
I see what you're
That's a
saying.
natural tendency. We can't stop it, right? One text comes, your heart starts to beat, maybe, right? And so forth. And so if we do this individually, why not collectively? It could be very, very plausible that we would have collectively, in a sense, out of a sense of collective misery, created together this whole alternative reality. So we are really, this is very difficult to overcome. Anybody want to try? We have like 9 minutes. Anybody have a way to respond to Nietzsche on this? Yes, Ahmad, go ahead, please.
You're definitely more well read in Nietzsche than I am, but my argument would be that Nietzsche himself is using thought and logical reasoning in order to refute Christianity. But that which he is using is itself unobservable and beyond the material. So that's kind of hypocritical.
That's good. You can, yes.
God is transcendent and beyond the physical. You're trying to apply to God that which can't.
Yeah. What Nietzsche is saying, that this is a fiction, we have no way of knowing either way. I think that's what you're saying, Ahmad, right? We can't know whether there is a God, but likewise, we can't know if there is not a God, right? Because these are not things that are available to our knowledge. So what Nietzsche is saying, that it's a delusion, could itself be a delusion, right? It could itself be a complete fabrication, because when it comes to that realm, like you're saying, and I think Rumi made this point, right? If you access it intellectually, you're going to get confused. You can't access this intellectually and know if there is a God, or know if there isn't. You can't, right? You can only, and then Rumi says you can only access it in the heart. But certainly, right, both knowledges, the knowledge that there is a God, or the certainty that there is a God, as well as the certainty that there is no God, they're both wrong. You can't be sure either way. Am I making sense? Does that make sense? So this is why the atheist, right, the one who knows there is no God, is just as bad as the conservative Christian who knows there is a God, right? You can't know either. This is why the position we're going to see with Levinas, the position of the agnostic, the one who doesn't know for sure, whether there is or not, right? This is the most healthy position. We're going to talk about that when we talk about Levinas, who's coming up, right? But you can't know either way. And so what Nietzsche is asserting, he is crossing the line, right? In a way, you can't know either way. But nice, Ahmad. I like that refutation. Very nice. Anyone else want to try their hand at refuting Nietzsche? Can I see your faces? Pelico, Cor, Aslam, Castaneda, Pinto, Colon, U. Why you turn off your faces? What's the point? Guys, I'm waiting. Aslam, Cor, Pinto, Castaneda, Colon, U. Okay, I saw a hand. Achunov, is that you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Basically, what I want to say is that Nietzsche is trying really hard to disprove something that is, in essence, I don't want to say irrationally, but nobody would refute that it's a faith, and faith requires belief. He's trying so hard to disprove religion by using like through like a mathematical sense, like this, that must equal that. But therefore, there's a variable there which includes faith, where you must take that leap of faith to believe in that religion, and if you don't have the faith, then you don't believe in it simply.
Absolutely, you're making a really good case again that there are some dimensions that you cannot access with knowledge. You can only access if you shift to the attitude of faith, right? So in a way, if you come with an intellect like Nietzsche is doing, right? This doesn't make sense. This is not logical, right? This doesn't exist. I don't see evidence, right? If you come with this approach, you cannot access, right? Certain dimensions you cannot access with the mind. I think Maimonides made this point also in his writings, that there are certain regions of life, of being, that we cannot access intellectually. Even Maimonides says that, right? Can you believe it? And of course, Rumi, right? So both of them already, I think, both Maimonides and Rumi are kind of saying what you guys are saying, right? That Nietzsche is approaching it the wrong way, right? Nice. Okay, great. What we're going to see, let me see. I'm looking if I have, for some reason I'm missing a page, the page I want to talk about right now. Okay, I'll improvise. So we're going to see when we study Marcel, right, and Levinas, we're going to look at how they respond to Nietzsche, right? And we're going to see, I'll just summarize briefly where these two philosophers are going to go. Marcel is going to try to show that the experience that Rumi is talking about, the experience of the feeling of the presence of God, can actually be argued for. You can actually make a philosophical argument for the legitimacy of that. So what Rumi just told us about in a poem, Marcel is going to try to argue philosophically in a way that would make sense, right, to Nietzsche, I think. So showing that this feeling that we have is real. It's not a delusion. Make sure you write this down. Let me say it again. Marcel's going to show that the feelings that we experience, that Rumi has told us about, right, these feelings of peace or love or of the presence of God, right, these are not delusions, he's going to tell us. These are actually real, and he's going to try to prove that to us philosophically. So he has Nietzsche in the back of his mind, right, when he's doing this. Levinas is going to talk about how religion is not like what Nietzsche is saying, a crutch, right, for the miserable, that religion actually is a call to action, to responsibility. So there he's moving away from this notion of religion just there to comfort us because we're so wretched. And he's going to say, no, true religion is action, responsibility, engagement in the world, not escape in the world. Let me say that again, right? For Levinas, religion is not an escape from the world. It's a deeper engagement with the world. It's responsibility for the world. So you can see already how these two thinkers are going to have Nietzsche in the back of their minds and are going to try to formulate spirituality in a way that I think Nietzsche might consider interesting. Okay, anything else before we conclude? Any questions, comments, issues? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.